What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Crypt podcast. I am your host, Tony. Hope everybody's doing well. It is December 18th, 2025. Just a few days away from Christmas. There's a few more shopping days left until Christmas Day hits. So, speaking of Christmas here, before we get into today's topic, what's your plans? You guys got plans with family? Do you have dinner plans with anybody? Or are you just not doing anything at all? Because if you guys got a free moment on Christmas Day, on my main channel, Crypt, I'm going to have a little chat box up, pretty much most of the day for people to come and gather and chat and do whatever they want to do, have a good old time. Something I just wanted to do for my subscribers, maybe for someone who may just want to take a break from family festivities, or just in plain and simple, don't have anything to do that day. So be sure you come over to my main channel, Crypt on Christmas Day if you can. Stop by, say hi, talk with each other. I won't be in the chat, all day myself. I'll be popping in and out and saying hi every once in a while. And that's it. So without any further ado, let's get on with today's topic. It's a special one, man. This one is it's another doozy. And I've covered something similar to this in a previous episode too, where a family was given I think it was their son's brain matter back in a box from a funeral home by mistake. Well, this one is a San Jose, California family, and something similar happened, as way of this, and it's sad. This happens. It's a screw up. It's a mess up. And like I said before, doing these podcast episodes, you realize how, when I'm looking up stuff to do for a podcast, you really realize how often this kind of stuff does happen, and you don't think it does. But once you start looking up stuff, doing podcast episode after podcast episode, yeah, you start finding out that stuff like this seems fairly common. So the dealio here is a San Jose father is suing a funeral home after he was mistakenly given his deceased son's brain matter instead of his personal clothing. The incident happened in 2023. It became public after a civil lawsuit was filed. Rightfully so. The deceased was 27-year-old Alexander Pinion, and his parents paid approximately $10,000 for funeral services. And they requested the return of their son's clothing prior to his burial. And the funeral director handed the father a red biohazard bag, and the bag was represented as containing clothing. But as we are going to dig deeper, it did not contain clothing. Now, I want to be very clear up front. These are the facts as they are laid out in a civil lawsuit. Nothing speculative, nothing exaggerated. This isn't about shock value. This is about what happens when trust breaks down at one of the most vulnerable moments of a person's life. And, we all think a funeral home is one of the last places anyone expects a mistake like this. But as I've stated, it seems like this stuff happens fairly often, unfortunately. So I got a question for you guys, my audience, my Crypt kids, as one of my subscribers on YouTube on my other channel says. If someone hands you a bag from a funeral home, would you assume you know exactly what's inside of it? Most people wouldn't even check. Why would you? There's an assumption of professionalism here, an assumption that the system works. That assumption is important to remember as we keep going. So here's what happened next as we know it. The father took the bag home. He emptied the contents into his washing machine. Instead of clothing, he discovered human brain matter. The brain matter was later identified as belonging to his son. The father placed the material back into the bag, and he returned it to the funeral home. Wow. This discovery didn't happen at the funeral home. It didn't happen in a controlled setting. It happened inside the man's own home. There's no preparation for something like that, emotionally or psychologically. And for you guys here, at what point would you realize something was seriously wrong in that situation? Some of you might say immediately, others might say not until it was already too late. That moment of realization matters because it's not something you can unsee. Once you see that, yeah, it's seared into your brain. The funeral home response. According to the lawsuit, the funeral director told the father, quote unquote, "I'll take it from here." The lawsuit claims no immediate explanation was given, no apology was made at the time. The family later learned their son's brain had been removed during an autopsy. They state they were not informed beforehand. Those 4 words, "I'll take it from here," carry a lot of weight. For some people, that might sound calm. For others, it might sound dismissive. What's missing here is communication. For you guys, should families always be notified if organs are removed during an autopsy? Is silence in a moment like this acceptable or unacceptable? Throw it down in the comment box below, guys. This isn't just about legality, it's about dignity. Even when something is medically routine, families still live with the aftermath. Handling of the brain. These are the facts alleged in the lawsuit. The lawsuit alleges the brain was placed in a container. The container was stored outside the funeral home. It allegedly remained there for months. These claims are part of the civil complaint. The funeral home has not publicly disputed all allegations at this time. Allegations matter even before a verdict because they show what the family believes happened after the mistake. And they raise serious questions about protocol and oversight. For you guys, throw it in the comment box below. What responsibility does a funeral home have once remains are returned after a mistake? Is correcting the mistake enough? Or does responsibility extend beyond that? Now, here is the legal action as we know it. The family filed a civil lawsuit in California. Claims include negligence, breach of contract, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit states the father experienced severe emotional trauma, psychological distress, and ongoing mental suffering. So how many, let's see, here's the funny thing here of these the claims of the lawsuit here. And I've done it, how I've done a lot of these podcast episodes where it's like a snafu, the funeral home screws up. And the claims, it's always negligence, breach of contract, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. But I guess that's the verbiage I guess you got to use when you're filing a lawsuit, in a situation like this. But it's like these claims are over and over again in these lawsuits. But like I said, that's probably how you got to frame it. When you're suing a business like a funeral home over something like this. Now, civil court doesn't determine guilt in the criminal case, or in the criminal sense, excuse me. It determines responsibility and whether harm occurred that deserves compensation. Do you believe emotional distress should be treated as a serious injury in court? What would justice look like in a case like this? Throw it out in the comment box below, guys. Now, money can't undo this, but accountability can still matter. Now, here's the industry context here, the facts. From what I found out, brain tissue is classified as biohazardous material. It is subject to specific handling and storage regulations. Funeral homes are licensed and regulated by state authorities. Violations may result in fines, license suspension, civil liability, and criminal charges have not been announced in this case as of yet. This isn't just about grief, it's also about public safety. Biohazard rules exist for a reason. For you guys, should mistakes involving human remains ever be treated as criminal or only civil matters? Where do we draw that line? And who decides when a mistake becomes something more? The current status? The case remains in civil litigation. I think this is from, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I think it's from 2023. So the case remains in civil litigation. No final ruling has been issued. The funeral home continues to operate. The family is seeking financial damages and accountability. This story doesn't have an ending yet, only an ongoing process. Would you guys trust a funeral home again after hearing a case like this? Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, especially in spaces like this. A grieving father was mistakenly given his son's brain instead of clothing. The discovery occurred inside his home. The incident resulted in a lawsuit. The case raises questions about funeral home oversight, transparency with families, handling of human remains, accountability after mistakes are made. This isn't about one family alone. It's about systems, safeguards, and what we expect when we place loved ones in someone else's care. What safeguards do you think should exist to prevent something like this from ever happening again? Throw it out in the comment box below, guys. Your thoughts, your perspectives, what are they? Because conversations like this matter. And that's where I'll leave this one, guys. Throw it out in the comment box below on whatever platform you're listening to this on. What safeguards do you think exist to prevent something like this from ever happening again? Or what safeguards should exist to prevent something like this from ever happening again, guys? Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Like I said, this stuff happens, since I started doing the podcast episodes, stuff like this I've been finding happens all the time. And in my first episode or so that I found on something like this, I thought, it's just isolated. But it happens. It happens a lot. There needs to be more accountability. There needs to be more inspections. There needs to be more training, I think. Because I've stated in past podcasts that I've found out, these places do get inspected and do get audited and stuff, but it's not often enough. They need more resources for something like this to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen. This is at a time in a person's life when you're making arrangements for a family member that these kind of mistakes should not be happening. Oh, man, I feel for these families. It's crazy. All right, guys, thank you all so much for listening to me rant. Like I said, throw out in the comment box below what you think should happen. And I'll be coming at you soon with another one. Now, if there's a follow-up to this, if there's, anything, new developments that happen, I'll be letting you guys know. All right. Thank you all so much, and I'll talk to you later.